Hello and welcome to The Man from Hildebrand. I believe that this is the 41st episode, so I would like to thank you all for following me, liking me, sharing me, subscribing to me. Whether or not you share me, I don't know. I tend to share myself just to get my opinions and things out there. I've had a couple of new subscribers in the past week. Anyway, welcome to my channel. I hope you've enjoyed the content so far. It's nothing exciting. I'm certainly not comparing myself to the likes of Calvin Dyson because he's on a whole new different ball game. This is just me being very down to earth, very Billy Bob basic. No fancy graphics, no fancy music. It's just there, and this is basically just me. It's just a Bond fan venting his opinion, either positively or frustratingly. As soon as we hear stuff from the media, if it's like total nonsense, got it blown out of proportion, or if it's something with a bit of sense, I like to try and sort of dissect it and give a kind of a down-to-earth, realistic, sensible opinion on it. Any hot news, I'll come and try and tell people to like calm the fuck down and stop losing the shit, because I'll give them kind of an honest opinion, for them to think about. Because as we know, with the media, they tend to get it wrong and they tend to blow it out of proportion, and people sort of get excited and sort of jump on the so-called bandwagon, if you like. So I'm here just to kind of keep you all sort of down to earth. So this week it's going to be a bit of a news roundup, because there has been some absolutely huge announcements lately, but I will get to them later on in the episode. So first of all, a few weeks ago, Ian Fleming Publications had announced that they were to release the John McCluskey Signature Collection. This is from Titan, and this, I believe, is to be released on the beginning of September and retails at about £44. This is basically like a collected volume of McCluskey's work, which he did for the Daily Express comic strips. So this is the first 7 of the Fleming titles. So this is basically, the comic strip adaptations which was seen in the Daily Express back in the 1950s. So this is Casino Royale through to Goldfinger, plus some bonus material. So I would assume it could be kind of like unused pieces of comic strips or alternate takes or concept ideas. Who knows? But for the price, it's pretty reasonable. Whether or not this is going to be a first in a series, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, personally for me, I'm not going to get it because I've actually got the Titan sort of collections which they released back in the early 2000s. And again, they do me fine. Even though admittedly I haven't actually read them, still I've got them and I should really get around to reading them. But I've basically got them, and they've got some really cool sort of introductions. But it also kind of surprises me actually how many Bond fans aren't even aware of these Daily Express comic strips. I mean, personally, I mean they were a huge thing because they were sort of the first thing that we got before the films. When it comes to Moonraker, I think Moonraker, that was told from a first-person perspective. But the Moonraker novel, that is favoured by fans as being, one of Fleming's best works. And a lot of us want to see that on screen. And the beauty of these sort of comic strips is they do kind of work as storyboards. So, you read Moonraker, it kind of gives you an idea what that could have looked like if it was on film, But for any Bond fans, they are a must-have because they do play a vital role in the whole legacy. Because, these were, before Sean Connery came in, on the big screen as James Bond and Dr. No, these were probably the second best thing that we got at the time. They had to be released by Titan. It's available to pre-order on the Ian Fleming Publications website, and I say the retail at about £44, and it's released in September. So if that interests you, go and get it. Also, on the 25th of March, Amazon Prime had dropped Bait, which was what they called the James Bond comedy starring Riz Ahmed. I watched it. There was 6 episodes in total, which was about half-hour long. It's kind of one of them perfect examples of where the trailer actually looks better than what it actually is. The trailer was basically a concoction of footage from the very first episode, which I think was probably the best episode out of the lot. The James Bond kind of angle soon became sort of the sub-story. Overall, it wasn't kind of what I was expecting. However, there was some kind of couple of sort of interesting bits which, as Bond fans, we kind of soon forget about, but kind of puts a different perspective on things. So Riz Ahmed plays Shah Latif, who is auditioning for Bond. As he leaves the premises, he's then photographed by the paparazzi. He's then splattered all over the internet, all on front pages, and then that's where he kind of, comes about that he is to be the new Bond. And quoting Shah Latif himself, what do you expect? I'm a Muslim, the first brown coloured actor who's a Muslim to play Bond. And, amongst that, he gets hate. He gets a lot of people, sort of somebody chucking a pig's head through his window, which kind of reminds me of the time when Daniel Craig auditioned for Bond and he got the part, and the media absolutely detested him, even though Craig actually proved to have done one of the best films in the series and, made a lot of people eat their own words. It was kind of reminiscent of that time when Craig was announced as Bond. But it also kind of, made you kind of shed a light on the other actors who were auditioning for the part. So in Bait, there was another Muslim actor who was auditioning for Bond, and he seemed to be favoured. He was, more loved than Riz Ahmed's character. And then that kind of puts it into perspective, thinking, well, I wonder how Henry Cavill would have felt. Because obviously Henry Cavill auditioned for Bond for Casino Royale. He lost out. And yet he is still favoured by many to be Bond. Favoured more than Daniel Craig. So it kind of makes you think, how does Daniel Craig feel that he's got, somebody, Henry Cavill, who is wanted by the public, and then how does Henry Cavill felt that, he's wanted by the public, but then he lost out. I don't think Henry Cavill losing out to Bond's affected him. I think his career is pretty much took off without the aid of Bond. There was moments where I just thought, well, this is weird, especially when this pig's head, he seems to then, Shah Latif seems to then carry this pig's head round with him, who happens to be voiced by Patrick Stewart. So he's got this talking pig's head. But hats off to Amazon for putting James Bond in different genres. We've obviously had now James Bond in the game show sort of genre with Road to a Million. We've now got James Bond in the comedy genre with Bait, even though for me, I wouldn't have really called it a comedy. Comedy for me is kind of, a lot of laugh out loud moments. Also, a few weeks ago, I had an article published on Spybury. Now, if you're not familiar with Spybury, it's a podcast hosted by Shane Whaley. There's the Spybury Facebook group, and there's a Spybury Instagram account. There's also a blog on their website. So I basically wrote an article kind of trying to emphasise that No Time to Die, there was a lot more Fleming in there, which people care to kind of think, and that, was Bond dying, the kind of aftermath and all the uproar, was it really necessary? Because yes, Daniel Craig, James Bond, died, but James Bond is far from dead, and I believe 2026 is the golden year of Bond, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on. But yeah, Spybury, absolutely fantastic. If you love your espionage, if you love your spy films, spy TV, spy books, then go over to Spybury and you can have some fantastic sort of interaction with fellow spy enthusiasts. So yes, Spybury, head over there, give it a read, give it a listen, do whatever. But anyway, if you're into that, I would totally recommend that, and give me the article a bit of a read as well. Also last week, I discovered, I don't know if this is old news or not, but I discovered that a gentleman called Dimitri Vegas has now been added to the cast of 007 First Light. Dimitri Vegas, I had never heard of him. He's apparently a DJ, but then, you speaking to somebody who listens to The Shadows and who spends all day listening to John Barry, I'm really not going to know who exactly that person is. But he's on the DJ circuit, on the clubbing circuit, whatever you call it, I don't know. But he is to play or make a cameo in First Light. With what I understand, we've got Lenny Kravitz, who plays a villain, Buana, and I believe the impression I'm getting is that he kind of runs a bit of an underworld, and he has nightclubs and stuff and whatever. Dimitri Vegas is to be performing there. I did a bit of a research on, did a bit of a Google search on Dimitri Vegas, and he had appeared at Tomorrowland Winter last year, 2025. And there's a clip on YouTube, about a minute long, where he kind of does his version of the Bond theme. It's a remix of the Bond theme. Now, whether or not this was used to tease the fact that he's got an appearance, or it's to help promote First Light, or whether or not it would actually feature in First Light or be part of the soundtrack, I don't know. But it's basically the Bond theme with Patrick Gibson kind of saying Bond. Like to kind of hear the rest of that sort of mix, but yeah, it's out there. It's very interesting. But of course, First Light is going to be with us on the 27th of May, which is only about 6 weeks away, providing they don't postpone it again, because before they postponed it, we should have had it by now. We'd all be talking about it now. So they're clearly kind of still working on it. They're kind of still tweaking it, and still kind of teasing us and not sort of introducing these other kind of cast members, other names to it. So yeah, in terms of First Light, when that sort of reaches us on the 27th, I've said it before, the marketing campaigns are going to go up, the publicity. We hopefully should have confirmation soon of whether or not Lana Del Rey is performing the title song. Sources say that she is, but it still needs to be fully confirmed, and I'm kind of really looking forward to kind of hearing what she would bring to the mix, and I reckon that song will be played on the radio, because between IO Interactive and Amazon, they are going to really bring this out to get Bond out there. The fact that we've got now, 007 First Light, Coca-Cola on the shelves of the supermarkets, that's kind of telling people, it's back. Bond is back. And of course, we've got the Corgi Valhalla being released in summertime. So yeah, all these kind of exciting new products. We're still waiting on All of Our Brown. All of Our Brown said to me that there's going to release a new collection in springtime. Spring has just begun, I know, but I'm sort of keeping a very close eye out to see whether or not it would actually be a collection to celebrate anniversaries, or whether or not it'd be a collection dedicated to First Light. But yeah, First Light, it's going to be with us, and I think it's going to be absolutely amazing. Whilst still talking about music, March the 31st, which I thought was a very clever move, LaLaLand had announced the release of Diamonds Are Forever. So this was on March the 31st. Now, usually in traditional LaLaLand style, they tend to release new titles on the first day of the month. And I think if they release anything on April the 1st, they are going to be bombarded with, oh, this ain't real, you must be having a laugh, this is a joke. So I think it's very clever and very well done to them to actually release it on March the 31st. I wasn't surprised, because I actually said back in January that with it being the 55th anniversary, it's a possibility that we may expect them, expect a reissue, plus for your eyes only. I was surprised that it was a 2 CD presentation. I was under the impression that Lucas Kendall had pretty much expanded it back in 2003, and he basically got all the WADs available. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting one, because the 2003 edition has 21 tracks. This release from LaLaLand on disc 1, the score presentation, is 27 tracks. So there's 6 additional tracks without actually listening to the entire score and album once it arrives. We don't know what to expect. They may be pieces which were written but not used in the film, because that, we discovered, is a common thing in Bond films ever since they gave us Moonraker and Thunderball, because there's quite a lot in those albums which were never used in the films. So to know what Diamonds Are Forever is kind of got in soul is exciting. So yeah, they basically, got 6 extra tracks. They're put in all in chronological order, split them up, clean them up. They've gave us an alternative Diamonds Are Forever, which has got the extra verse, which I'm looking forward to. And they've also got the Italian version of Diamonds Are Forever, sung by Shirley Bassey. Now, I believe that one, the people at LaLaLand, Neil Espel, Chris Malone, they basically had to kind of dissect that track, unpick it, clear it up, and reconstruct it, rebuild it. So absolutely hats off to you guys, because it's just incredible with what with the work you've been doing. So yeah, Diamonds Are Forever, of course I ordered it. The artwork again is a vast improvement from the original sort of artwork. They've kind of manipulated it. I think they've kind of put the sort of diamond satellite directly behind Connery as opposed to the side. But anyway, I mean, everything that LaLa have been doing is absolutely fantastic. From the score presentation, from the unreleased music, to the artwork, to the what they call the environmental pieces. When they first release the title. Yeah, it's just absolutely dog's doo-doo. So yeah, I've ordered mine, and that's coming out on, well, I believe it's going to be shipped end of April, so I would suspect we'll be probably receiving it at the kind of middle of May, beginning of May to the middle, depends on what part of the world you live. So yes, LaLaLand, that was announced on the 31st of March. Now, that was 8 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock at night. So 31st of March was like, God, I just could not breathe. So the 31st, 8 o'clock on the 31st, 8 o'clock in the evening, Ian Fleming Publications announced a brand new Bond novel from none other than Charlie Higson, King's Zero. I mean, I absolutely fucking love the title, and I love the artwork. There's just so far that there's just nothing not to love about that. I think it was kind of on the cards. I think a lot of us sensed that after Higson had done his On His Majesty's Secret Service novella back in 2023, I think a lot of us sensed that he'll come back and do a full-blown adult Bond novel set in today's world. So this is the first kind of modern Bond since Jeffrey Deaver's Carte Blanche. There's a bit of a theory whether or not Charlie Higson's Bond / timeline is to follow on from Kim Sherwood's novels, or did you go from Jeffrey Deaver's novel? Which one is it? So yeah, it's I say this is the golden year of Bond, because we've got obviously news slowly coming about Bond 26. We've got a brand new game on its way. We've got a brand new novel on its way. What I found interesting about this, though, is it's not a James Bond novel, it's the James Bond novel. And the artwork, I think it's kind of a little bit it kind of reminds me of Silverfin, ever so slightly, apart from you've got gold sharks. So whether or not that is something that is kind of played within the plot, I'm reading the synopsis. Beginning with the murder of an agent in Saudi Arabia by a weapon never before seen by the Secret Service, and spanning the globe in an epic race against time to avert global catastrophe, the novel brings a literary Bond squarely into the 21st century, where the old world that made him is crumbling and terrifying new order emerges, while a dangerous villain, the most distinctive since Goldfinger, moves in the shadows. Higson explores themes of power, technology, and international tension over resources in an extraordinarily timely story. Was Goldfinger really that dangerous? And I'm now thinking, okay, Goldfinger and then with gold sharks, is he kind of connected to that? It embraces the worlds of both the literary Bond and the cinematic Bond, and my bad guy has all the elements we expect from a classic Bond villain, with a twist that's not been done before. Now I'm thinking, is this twist, could this be Goldfinger's son out for revenge? I don't know. But the fact, how he says he's got the classic elements of the literature Bond and the cinematic Bond, it's basically what Raymond Benson did. Benson was given the orders by Ian Fleming Publications to kind of do his novels as if they were films. And as you read them, it does pretty much read that way. Also, what's interesting is that when Ian Fleming Publications announced this on the evening of the 31st, it wasn't until the next day when it actually all appeared on the website. So it was like 14 hours later it was then announced on the website. A lot of people was kind of unaware of this announcement on the previous evening. So come 1st of April, people are thinking, well, hang on, it is a joke. What's happening? But it was interesting because I think it's the first time they've actually had kind of MGM, Amazon, London operations, in the same kind of sentence and same blurb as Ian Fleming Publications, because back in the day, those were like two different entities. Now it's kind of merged into one. So I'm kind of thinking, now Amazon have got the Bond license, took over the Bond franchise. Will they, will we get a better chance of having, depending on how King's Era performs, could this then become Bond 27? Or could Charlie Higson be asked to write a screenplay for a future Bond film? So yeah, I kind of feel that with how the way Amazon are going, there's going to be a lot more sort of relaxation on approaching, kind of certain things. Because I know back in, when it was Eon, they was very sort of uptight about, they were totally against adapting continuation novels and all that because they had to pay the loyalty. But I'm thinking, now it's Amazon, and now it's kind of seems to be all kind of one and all shared. There's a very good chance that we may get Amazon to adapt the Kim Sherwood trilogy, you know, into a TV series. It would be interesting to see if they would ever actually consider adapting the Gardner novels, or even Colonel's Son, bringing up to modern times. Definitely last Tuesday was a fantastic day for Bond fans, because LaLaLand had announced Diamonds Are Forever, expanded, and Ian Fleming Publications came along and gave us King Zero. Also, finally, on the 15th of April is the CinemaCon, which is to take place in, I believe, Las Vegas. This is, I think the first one was last year, and it's where all these major studios going and attend. So you got Paramount, Universal, MGM, Amazon. They, all these big studios are there to talk about the upcoming projects and the upcoming films. Now, Amazon and MGM are wanting to release 15 films a year. So hopefully next week we should get some information on Bond 26. Whether or not Denis Villeneuve is going to be there, whether or not Stephen Knight's going to be there, I don't know. I would imagine Stephen Knight's probably promoting the latest Peaky Blinders series, but we may get Amy Pascal and David Heyman there. So yeah, 15th of April, I'm going to be listening out with some sharp ears, because I would imagine the day after we would get some kind of news. We may get more of an idea of what to expect from Bond 26 and the future of Bond, of the Bond franchise. They may, announce spin-offs. I don't know. Who knows? So yes, that is the news for today. So yeah, we've got the Signature Collection from Titan, which features the works of John McCluskey and features the first 7 of the Fleming titles, which was adapted by the Daily Express. We've got Bait. Bait is out on Amazon Prime. Give it a watch. Let me know what you thought of it in the comments. For me, it wasn't kind of what I was expecting. And then, yes, we've got Dimitri Vegas make an appearance in First Light. Yes, interesting. With his sort of James Bond themed remix. And we have got Diamonds Are Forever expanded and remastered from LaLaLand, as well as King Zero from Ian Fleming Publications, written by none other than Charlie Higson. So I'm sure I will be back then to discuss the aftermath of CinemaCon. But for now, that is it, and thank you very much. Don't forget to like and share, and thank you to the new subscribers. Cheerio. Bye-bye.